Bitcoin's put in a new all-time high closing price. It's also hit a new fresh all-time high price. Most of the markets are in new all-time high territories, looking at the traditional markets, including real estate, hitting new fresh all-time highs. Now, this is all part of the everything bubble that we've been discussing here on the channel for many, many years now, looking specifically at the lows. And even more specifically, if you wanted to recount March of 2023, when we had the banking crisis, when most believed the world had to collapse because of the financial institution problems. Now we can reflect on that 12 months later, almost to the exact day, 12 months later, the markets have skyrocketed from that point. Now, it's not only BTC, it's also the S&P 500. This is your March bottom. It's almost an exact anniversary. We could celebrate it today, 12 months from that day. And I mean celebrations in light of these huge gains to the upside for basically every single market around the world. Now, I've gone on long and hard about how these markets should have gone up from that point, especially back from that low. And here we are today, 12 months later. It's not a pat on the back, but what I do want to express to you guys today is the major trap now that the markets are in new all-time high territories. Now, I don't want to get too bearish on the whole thing. I'm bullish. I've been bullish for years. Maybe I'm not even bullish enough with how hard these markets have been running and how much I think there is left on the other side. There are going to be major traps along the way. And I want to outline two of those very specific traps in today's video. Super simple. Anyone can understand them, but it's about our mindset when we get to see those traps play out in real time in front of our faces. Our eyes and ears and heart and head will not believe the lies that are presented to us when these markets reach their peaks. Hit the like button as you do, jumping onto these videos. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do so now. It's your home of macro cycle analysis, looking at Bitcoin, cryptos, the traditional markets, your stock markets, commodities. US dollar is a big one today. We're going to look at interest rates and of course the real estate cycle as well. We have a lot to cover today, and this is on the back of some of your questions and comments in the comment section down below, which I try to read almost every single one of them. So make sure you do leave your thoughts down there as they help develop the videos that I'm creating here on the channel, just based on my 17 plus years of experience in the markets, from real estate and the traditional markets, and of course cryptocurrencies back from early 2017. So I don't want to start this off super bearish. I want to start this off massively, degenerately, very bullish on the markets. That does not mean I think the Bitcoin is going to pump to $90,000 today or tomorrow. For all I know, there could be a correction coming up, but we have seen a new fresh all-time high weekly closing price now, getting very close, if not to the exact dollar of the previous all-time high at 69,000. It's going to depend on which exchange you're watching, but here on Coinbase, it closed above the previous all-time high. And so I'm extremely bullish. Look at the volume on these last couple of weeks as the market has been going up. And what I want to mention first up in the video, just coming back to some of these comments and suggestions along the way, especially if you're getting into the market a little later, if you can't stomach violent corrections. We're at that stage now where things get pretty crazy because of the volatility that we're seeing in the market going to the upside. Then you either have to trade with less capital or don't trade at all. There's no sugarcoating way around it. There's no one can tell you. No one, even if they promise you, they do not know. If you buy now, that there's zero chance of a correction 10, 20, 25% lower. No one can say that for sure. So if you can't stomach that, then trading in the market's probably not for you. But if you can stomach that, then from what we're seeing on the charts with the higher highs and higher lows, the probabilities are still to the upside. There's still more upside to go, but no one knows whether we're going to get any of those severe corrections. Now, with that out of the way, keep that in the back of your minds. Let's look at how degenerate we can get on altcoins at the moment and have a look at some of the time targets before I get onto the big lies that come at the end of these cycles. It's happened every single crypto cycle, and for the real estate and stock market cycle, it also happens with that cycle as well. Now, for the total cryptocurrency market cap, using our TIA indicator here, so it's the total market cap excluding Bitcoin, excluding ETH, and excluding stablecoins so we can get a better read on the market, we're sitting at around $550 billion. We're coming up very close to the 50% level here at around 570 billion. That's from the cycle top to the cycle bottom, and we split that in half. If we take it off the log scale, here is our linear there. Then you can see that we've got a little bit of resistance overhead at this point in time for March, after being up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months straight with higher highs and higher lows. Is it the end? Well, last cycle we had more than 6 months going straight up, even though it did pause at key levels, have maybe a few days off, and then start to pump again. Get back to that previous old all-time high. You can see the market ran up, came back underneath it for a monthly close, even though it was the highest close, and then it went on for its next 2.5 month run to the peak before we had a mega correction. That correction was about 60 to 70% depending on which altcoins you were in. So if we still need to get to all-time highs and then break past that, we can still experience pretty severe corrections, even though the market's not ready to end yet. We've got that in mind now for altcoins as well. The altcoin markets are probably going to get pretty damn ridiculous, but we have to expect that to the downside as well. Now, I'm just looking at the time frames here, and I think it's important that we keep in mind some of the adjustments to the end of the cycle, basically the peak and then the correction. Now, I don't know when the peak is going to come in exactly. That's why I keep time frames. And my original time frame was somewhere around the second half of 2025. So that comes out here between July and December. But I think it's important to note now that we could experience something in the first half of 2025. Now, with the possible corrections in mind, should we see new fresh all-time high prices for the altcoin index here, what does that mean in terms of time? How much time is left until the end of the cycle, that final peak? You can see at the top here, this is in months. All of these candles are months. There is 9, that's the all-time high, and that's measured to this bar here, which was the bar that broke out of the previous all-time high. So just reading that alone, you had roughly 9 months until the peak, then the collapse, the complacency bounce, and then the market was over from that point. So we need to see at what month does the altcoin market get to a new all-time high. So waiting to see that at this point. Maybe it's next month, maybe it's later this year. But once we get that time frame in, that could give us an idea when this cycle could be over, with how many months is spent above that old all-time high. If we measure it from, let's say, next month, which is April, the Bitcoin halving month, 9 months would take us out to January of 2025. So that starts to shift the end stage of the cycle somewhere in the first half of 2025. That is still a right translated cycle. That's still ending 2 years after the bottom. It hasn't happened yet. We still don't have a signal to the upside for these markets breaking out of the monthly lower swing top. That price is roughly 660 billion. So that's going to give us a good insight as to whether we're going to see this break back past roughly $1 trillion for the altcoin market cap. But the real time measure starts from when we break past that old all-time high to see if it lines up to some sort of similar timing with the previous cycle here. And again, that was 9 months from the breakout of the previous old all-time high right there. And then you had 9 months left to that final peak. Within that, I have to stress it a lot, this was a near 70% correction on altcoins. Some of those altcoins that did correct in that move there from May down to June didn't make it back in that next move to the upside. So pay particular attention to the altcoins that you're in and compare them against their BTC values. That's why I keep these on the side here. If you can do that, you start to see the strength and the weakness in different altcoins. Some are going to make it again, others aren't, and they had their best run that you would be experiencing right now. As year 2 suggests, it's that stage where basically you're going to see a lot of gains on altcoins compared to BTC. Bitcoin's still going to be having its gains, but you're probably going to see the most amount of gains with altcoins during this particular year here. Now, if we are looking towards the first half of 2025 as a potential top through BTC and altcoins, maybe it's Q4 of 2024, so the end of this year, which is still a right translated cycle. Then we just keep those in mind in case the market does find a top at that area and start to pull back sometime earlier than many had anticipated. What I'd be looking out for there as well, if we were to see some sort of top in the market, Q4 of 2024 or the first half of 2025, is the possibility of a top market pullback, and then we see some sort of lower top later in 2025. I still think things are going to get pretty bullish throughout that period, but it might not come back to those tops. So I don't have the answers to this black side of the screen. I'm keeping multiple scenarios in mind, especially with the overall macro cycle here with real estate and stock markets and commodities and all that sort of stuff heading up, and things and asset prices getting higher and higher as we lead into this peak. And should this peak for real estate and the stock market come later, to late 2025, maybe 2026, then you might see cryptos also come back. They might not reach their previous all-time high, but they might make another resurgence because everything is going ballistic at that time. Still, on my bullish view of altcoins, some of these charts still haven't broken out of their previous tops, even though they still look very, very strong. You've got Solana here, which has put in significant bottom so far above its 50% level of the range from September into that peak. It peaked in December against BTC, so Bitcoin has been doing better than Solana since December. Most wouldn't believe that, but that is a pure chart fact. The top here was at roughly 290,000 Satoshis, and now it's dropped to 200,000 Satoshis. So it's lost nearly 30% while Bitcoin has gone up that particular amount. So that's something to keep in mind. But as it looks, no guarantees at this stage, but as it looks to be basing, it could be another area that it springboards from to get back to those previous tops. And I guess hopefully for Solana holders, it breaks those previous tops. That's what you want to see from a strong altcoin, not from something weak that is breaking down, taking out previous lows, and just not able to put in those extra runs. Ethereum is also holding up. It's putting in pretty decent weekly gains here. You can see the volume increasing. And when I say gains, I mean closes. It hasn't put in that much of a gain, only 1.76% against BTC, but it is holding out relatively well considering where it sits in the cycle. And many had expected Ethereum to continue to fall at this stage. For now, it's still holding up, higher lows, and while that stands, you'd have to expect that the market's going to continue doing more of what it's already done. This could be that accumulation area that we've been looking out for here for ETH before it gets its mega run on and potentially takes out its all-time high at roughly $4,900. That's the top for ETH. At the moment, it's sitting at $3,800 and the current top is $4,000. So not far to go there. And if ETH BTC is able to get away here and hopefully break that 6 million Satoshis, you'd probably see that next move of ETH USD start to play out, and then the rest of those altcoins in that ETH space, they would also start to take some of those gains, and you would see the flurry of excitement for all of these altcoins moving in unison with the ETH price as well. To me, it doesn't look like the altcoin party is over. Sometimes it takes a rest and gives us another opportunity to get in. We haven't seen any significant corrections, so going back to my whiteboard here, if you can't stomach the violent corrections, as we saw from altcoins, could be in the space of 50, 60, 70% when the big one comes, then either trade with less capital so you don't feel like your chest is tightening and you can't sleep at night, or don't trade at all. That's your options. No one's got a gun to your head telling you have to trade these markets. I know it feels very FOMO-ish and you want to be in these markets, but at the end of the day, your health is more important than trying to make a few bucks out of altcoins. So I'm very bullish on the markets, cryptos, Bitcoin, but here are the massive lies that are coming at the end of this cycle. You may have seen it before. These sort of things happen every single time. We've got huge price targets. Everyone knows about that. I want to talk about where our profits go and what is going to be said to us at the end of these cycles as well about our profits. But first, I just want to have a look at this $1 million Bitcoin price target here. This has come off Altcoin Daily's video on YouTube, so it's nothing against them. It's basically what Cathie Wood is saying. $1 million. She's bringing that price, that time target forward now, way before 2030. Do the maths. It's really damn simple. Bitcoin market cap's roughly 1.3 trillion. Bitcoin price, it was 70,000 when I posted this the other on the weekend here. So if you're not following my X account, go do that. We've hit 100,000 followers, 100,300. So thank you very much, guys, who are following over there. That's another good reminder. We're going for 400,000 here on the channel. So share this with someone today. Let us know in the comment section who you are sharing this with, whether it's co-workers, is it your family? Are they asking you about Bitcoin and cryptos now? If they are, share the channel with them. Hopefully they get to see this information so they don't get screwed with this stuff, because this is what the mainstream sees. They see these $1 million Bitcoin price targets, and the only one who's getting rich off this is Cathie Wood. You get excited to buy Bitcoin. Where do you go to buy it? She sells it in an ETF. Great. Let me pay her 0.2% to buy some Bitcoin, and I get to hold it and, I don't know, talk about it with my friends that I have some Bitcoin. It's probably very unlikely that this is going to happen. Bitcoin's market cap, if it was $1 million, 18.5 trillion. Gold is at 14 trillion. And you need to find another, well, the market, Bitcoin, needs to find another 17 trillion to go into it. And yes, I understand if you put 17 trillion into Bitcoin, that would actually raise the market cap a lot more than what $17 trillion would do, right? Because you put $1 in and Bitcoin's price basically goes up $2 or $3. Can be a lot more. That's the multiple there. Talking about this now, 17 trillion is half of the United States debt. And that's going to magically appear to go into Bitcoin in less than 6 years. You've got to have rocks in your head to think this is going to happen. Now, if on the absolute craziest chance that it does happen, it would possibly be for a very brief period in time when you see those ridiculous spikes on the chart when it just goes absolutely nuts. Like 2017, it was a very, very brief period of time. It jumped up, nearly hit 20,000. On some exchanges, hit 20,000. And then you had a swift reversal, 20, 30, 40, 50%. Who knows what happens at that point? But to think that Bitcoin is going to hit that from here and do some sort of crazy multiple that it's never done is ridiculous, in my opinion. And Cathie Wood, she makes money from basically talking about BTC and how much you've got to get into it and how high the price targets are going to be. That's one of the biggest issues going into the peaks of the cycle. Basically, when you hit the bull markets, they all come out telling you why you need to be holding Bitcoin, which also brings on the crazy, crazy stories about the US dollar. Now, I know pretty much what I've said there goes against a lot of what people are saying now because it's a bull market, and I see the comments now already. You didn't see these comments 12 months ago. Now people are saying, well, it's possible. It's very possible that it could hit $1 million, that there's a shortage and there's ETFs and everyone needs to own it. And what if these millionaires don't get to own BTC? It's the same thing that happened in 2017. It's the same thing that happened in 2021. Now is this time different? Go for gold. But what is going to happen at the peak of this cycle? And we saw it in 2022 as well, when we had the peak in the stock markets, late 2021, early 2022. The story comes about that cash is trash. And I think this was a really good one here. A comment saying, Jason, cash is not the king. Go to Venezuela. It's a pilot for what's coming. Sure it is. I think they're all fooling us because they keep comparing the US to Venezuela. Now, I'm not a US citizen. I don't live there. I don't plan to live there. I'm not backing US whatsoever. I'm just taking a look at currencies and what could actually replace the US dollar in this short period of time. And this is, of course, my opinion and how I trade the market as a full-time investor. At the end of the day, you do you. This is just my opinion. But to think that the US dollar is going to hyperinflate and no one's got anywhere else to go is very unlikely. It's not impossible, but if, as investors, we have to take a chance on what we think is going to happen out in the world just based on what we see. And some people are getting very much swept up in this whole Venezuela thing that the US dollar is just going to be hyperinflated and you've got nowhere to put your money except in Bitcoin. And that is probably going to be even more pronounced as we get towards the peak of the cycle. And then potentially if cryptos collapse in 2025, if, these are just scenarios, and they come back again to that last resurgence into the peak here in maybe late 25 or 2026, people will think that they have to get rid of their cash because cash is trash and go and hold real assets at the peak of the market. It's probably the worst idea you can do is to be throwing cash into the markets at the peaks, because at the end of the day, there's nowhere else to go. And how they get to these peaks is by telling you, you've got to put all your cash into the market because you've got nowhere else to go. Everything else is going to collapse. Asset prices are going to keep going up. Once everyone has all their money in, there's no one else left to buy. So when someone goes to sell, the market comes down, and then that's that snowball effect that there is way more supply than there is demand. And that's where things get ridiculous. That's typically the narratives come any sort of peak in the market. You're better off being in the market than out of it. And it's usually those late to the party that that end up the worst at those points, because they have no more cash left, and the market corrects, and now they really have no more cash left because they start losing their jobs, and we go into recessions and depressions and long unemployment. And I understand that many people are waiting for a correction. I want to talk about this in a little more detail in future videos. House prices are crazy. Asset prices are crazy. Everything is beyond belief. It's very, very high. But hoping and waiting for a correction to get into the market probably isn't going to work out for those people either, because typically in recessions or depressions, a lot of people lose their job. And on top of that, to make things worse, the banks start to tighten how they lend money. They tighten their credit, their criteria to give out loans. And so you don't have a job, or maybe you've got a part-time job, or you've got lower pay now. Markets correct. The banks start to tighten again. It gets even harder to get that money to go and buy these dips. And so at those peaks, it's probably the most important time to be trying to keep some cash, something liquid on the sidelines in the event of a collapse. This needs to go into more detail in future videos, because there's still more to unpack there. It's like, well, when do we know if that collapse is coming? And should we start holding cash from now in hopes of that collapse? And we still see further upside in asset prices. You can see there's a lot to unpack, and it can get a little bit confusing for many people if this is your first rodeo. So hit the subscribe button on the channel. Join us at TIA Premium if you want to study this stuff in your own time and dive into it in more details. The links are in the top of the video description there. Thanks once again, guys, for your time and support here on the channel. And if you enjoyed this type of video discussing how the end of the cycle may play out, what we can do with our assets, what happens at those peaks, are we selling, are we holding, what do we do from that point? Let me know in the comments section down below, and I'll do more videos like this and discuss it towards the ends of the videos. See you in the next one. Till then, take care and peace out.